didn't we?
Magic.
All right, perfect. It's absolutely magic. Hi, guys. I see everybody piling into this amazing interview we have today. My name is Erin Noonkay. I'm the CEO and founder of Claiming Disability, a media organization working to educate, advocate, and empower the disabled community through media projects. And today I have two phenomenal guests. I have Danielle, who's a casting director, and Chantal, who was an accessibility coordinator for the blockbuster film that the internet cannot stop talking about. Wicked, guys, Wicked. We are so excited for disabled representation and accessibility representation in Wicked. And I am just going to start right off because I know you guys are here for the meat and potatoes of this interview, talking with Chantal and Danielle. So Chantal, why don't you start us off with your history, how you got started, and how you started working on this amazing blockbuster film that we're all freaking out about.
Well, this is the first thing I've done on this scale, so this is quite a big and new thing for me. I didn't expect to kind of be thrust into such a position of such epic proportion. Honestly, adapting things has been my life, and I'm 52 and I'm a wheelchair user. So I spent my whole life, I was a dancer. When I left school, I wanted to be a dancer. I took my exams in dance, but the exams weren't adapted for a disabled person to take them. So the examination board had to come and assess whether they thought I was, allowed to take it or not. So permission was granted. They had to adjust the syllabus to make it so. And then when I left school, I wanted to go to college and study dance, but I couldn't because there was no courses for me, so all the way through my life after all of this, I did work as a dancer until I was about 30. Then I fostered, and all the way through, I fostered able-bodied, disabled and deaf young people. And so I think my whole experience of my life has been about adapting the environment and not having opportunities to be trained specifically has always given me that problem-solving mind to make it happen myself. I solve the obstacles, I solve the problems, because my mum's in a wheelchair, so I've always had that entitlement that I'm allowed to do everything everyone else does. And so therefore that kind of led me here, I guess. I'm quite open to opportunities, and when I went for the interview for accessibility coordinator for Wicked, it just felt right. I just felt like I knew what I was talking about. It wasn't something I planned, and that interview I fell in love with the concept and the ethos, and here I am now.
I relate to that so wholeheartedly. Guys, we need to remember that hiring authentic disabled people to be access coordinators, to be writers, to be producers, to be directors is how we create an inclusive and accessible film experience. Now, you had the pleasure of working with the wonderful Marissa Bodie, who we love and adore, and Cecily Taylor, who Danielle has also worked with. So Danielle, why don't you give us a little background on how you got connected with the lovely young Nessa Rose, baby Nessa Rose. Give us a little background on how you got involved and your other background, because your background in inclusive casting is extensive, so we don't want to leave anything out.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm Danielle Pretzfelder-Demchik. I am a white woman with long brown curly-ish hair. And yeah, I'm the VP of advocacy for the Casting Society. So whenever somebody within the Casting Society, so casting directors all over the world, needs support to cast authentically, I'm the resource that people can come to. And if they're members, it's a great resource that a member has. I also I'm a casting director who runs a business, aside from doing that support for my colleagues. But the way I was connected with Wicked is that I'm close with the office that was casting it, the Telsey office, and they know that this is my focus. I focus on elevating underrepresented communities. Disability is the most underrepresented and misrepresented community in all of the underrepresented communities in media. 1 in 4 people identify as disabled, yet the best representation that we see on camera is 3%. That's the best that we see. Depending on the medium, it could be less than 1% that we're seeing. And then when you look on the other side of the camera, it's pretty much the same atrocious number that you're looking at. There's also a lot of people not disclosing because it's not a welcomed place to disclose. The challenges are endless in that sense, but I do a lot of work with scouting and looking for great young actors. A lot of really great actors in this community of all ages are not represented, or they're not represented when I'm searching. Somebody like Cecily now has a great rep, but that's not something she had before. And she's actually like a really great example of a kid who actually comes from a family that her dad works in this industry, but he wasn't seeing people like her on set. And why would you, when what I always tell people is, why would you tell your really talented, smart, capable kid, that's got the best head on their shoulders, they're so brilliant, they're funny, they're smart, to pursue something where you're not getting opportunities, where you don't see the kid, you don't see yourself on screen, you don't see that representation. Why would you set your kid up to fail like that? Which is basically what people are doing if you go out to do something you've never seen someone do before. But that's not to say that they cannot or they should not, and we're starting to see more of that. But that's a major shift. If you're on a typical set, you're not seeing the set being accessible. You're not seeing talent with disabilities playing the next door neighbor, playing the Starbucks employee. I mean, if you go to Starbucks or if you live in an apartment building, statistically, someone's going to be disabled that you run into every single day. I can tell you, walking on my little street, I have disabled neighbors. I have people down the street that are disabled that I don't know. I mean, because they're not celebrities, they're humans. This is the real world reflected
Yeah.
in media, and that's my goal, is to reflect the real world on screen. So that's how I know Cecily. Is she's a wheelchair dancer, and she was great. She'd come in for me for auditions since she was, I think, 4. I'd been casting a Nickelodeon project that was really open to seeing dancers of all abilities. We ended up casting a wheelchair dancer that we met through the Rolettes as well. Cecily was a little too young at that point. That was 2022 or 2021. I'm trying to remember when I was casting that. It's shot in 2022. But yeah, so that's the work that I do. I was at Nickelodeon in-house for over 14 years. I left and opened my own office 2 years ago. I worked in independent film before I was at Nickelodeon. But my focus is casting inclusively in all projects, in all roles. So not working on roles that are written as disabled necessarily. Like, of course, if something is written as disabled, that's my priority, is to authentically not just say it's a wheelchair user, but are they an ambulatory wheelchair user? Do they have a specific disability? Is there something that's, do they have an intersectional identity? Do they want to talk about being disabled, or would they rather that not be something that we talk about in the content? So, I dive into the specifics, but if I'm just casting anything, it's about casting inclusively. And in the real world, you don't wake up one morning and say, I want to be a wheelchair user today and a sister tomorrow. No, you're all of those things all the time. We all have intersectional identities, and the only way to really cast inclusively is to see disabled talent for all roles, just like you would see someone of color for all roles, or you would see someone of all genders for all roles if it is applicable to the role. I mean, I'm not going to go out for the role of a football player either, because I would not be a believable football player. But my job is to cast the best person for the role and to see all people that could potentially be a fit for all roles.
Danielle, you said so much. Like, I resonate with that so bad. First and foremost, guys, I saw a wheelchair user in a deodorant commercial and lost my mind as a very visibly disabled person, because I'm like, this is the type of representation we need. An average person being disabled as hell, using deodorant. Like, this is real. This is real inclusion. And as my sweatshirt says, guys, accessibility creates real inclusion. I love that. And right, it's a choice, right, Danielle? Some disabled people don't identify as disabled. So we need these complex conversations to be happening in the big spaces. And one of the things you touched on, which segues so beautifully, guys, is Chantal actually, from every part of the Wicked film, the blockbuster sensation, every part of it, Chantal touched. She worked with the makeup department, production, design, costume sets. Chantal, tell us a little bit about that. I know I started a Wicked series online where I was gushing about seeing a ramp front and center at Shiz University. I even made a video that said, that's the fantasy piece, guys, is having academia be accessible like that. For disabled people watching, that was the fantasy piece. How were you involved in all of that? Tell us about everything you did, from helping with showering with Cecily to make sure everything was accessible, to helping to make sure that the disabled actors were on grass. What pieces, just tell us how accessibility impacts everything that you did on this film, basically.
So,
Universal design, exactly. You guys get it.
so from the moment I think I was sold was in the interview when we talked about plausibility. So it wasn't just about making it physically accessible. It was about making it plausible to an audience also. So as a disabled person watching a movie, I would question how Nessa reached the top of those stairs as a disabled person. And so plausibility was really crucial. But the entire crew was so creative. The artistic department were so creative. Every department was so creative that it was beautiful to be part of, and the imagination. So I mean, the ramps were built in as part of it, as you saw, and they were just gorgeous, exquisite. Her wheelchair, you know, we thought it would be most sensible to go with a chair the same as the chair that the actress uses, and then to work on that and making it you know, Wicked appropriate. And
Not
so that's
to
what we did.
interrupt you, but the wheelchair was so gorgeous and
Wasn't it?
opulent.
Wasn't
And the
it?
disabled community is commenting, it's beautiful, opulent, fabulous, and functional.
Yeah.
Functional for a wheelchair. Like,
Even
I'm
the
sorry, we're so
detail.
in love with Nessa's look. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Gorgeous, right? Gorgeous. They thought of everything. You know, I mean, I'm so excited by the boat. I talk about the boat all the time because, you know, when we met before they started building, they talked about there being entrance to Shiz University by water, and so everybody had to access by water, by boat, and they wanted to build a boat that was accessible. That was so exciting to be part of that, and we didn't see enough of it actually. I'm hoping we'll see more of Nessa on the boat, but yeah, there was so many things. The forest, you know, accessibility within the forest. Even, I mean, we haven't seen a lot of stuff yet from the second movie, but you know, working in the UK is quite unpredictable when you're on location. There was a lot of rain, as you know, as wheelchair users know. Rain, mud, not very compatible. So, you know, we had to kind of think around all of those issues also. But you know, I think going in as an accessibility coordinator, the first thing that I wanted to do was reach out to the actors that I would be assisting, because I know myself that traveling is a really difficult thing let alone traveling and then being able to perform at my best, and also trusting that everything would be in place, because it's exhausting. And as in every industry, if you're committed to your job, you want to give 100% of yourself to that. You want to give your all. And if 10% of your all has been taken because your shower was particularly inaccessible and difficult that morning, or the doors were too heavy, or, you know, accessibility wasn't, then you're coming into your work setting at a disadvantage to everybody else. And I wanted to make sure that they knew that I was on top of it all, and I wanted to know what they needed, and we wanted to recreate the equipment that they needed in their environment at home, and make sure that first, before anything else, that was taken care of, so that they knew that they were coming into a space that would be nurturing.
Yes. And as somebody said in the comments, it created the accessibility features and accommodations that you showed on set to the cast and crew, to everyone, whether they were disabled or non-disabled, shown through in the film. These little changes make the biggest difference. I'm telling you guys, disabled people are paying attention to this type of representation. And I think one of the really interesting things that Marissa Bodie commented, she has shouted you out so many times. And
I love her.
she is just the
Yeah.
sweetest. And I'm just like, she talks about the vulnerability of being a disabled person in a film and having to be vulnerable in such a way. You're talking about there's such an exhaustion that happens when you're on a set for maybe 15, 18 hours a day. Then you go to your trailer and nothing's accessible. This was not the case with this film, guys. They even had their casting crew wearing masks in the casting trailer doing makeup. They were all about the safety. They were all about the accommodations. Guys, we need more accessibility representation on screen. And I know Danielle is working incredibly hard with all of her projects. As she just mentioned, she has so much that she is involved in. Danielle, can you kind of go on a little bit about your projects and how you feel like that's helping with accessibility representation and disabled representation as a whole for youth?
Yeah, I mean, I infuse that into everything that I do. I mean, there's projects where I'm brought on because that's something that a producer wants, or they know that's an important part of the audience to represent on, on whatever we're working on, whether it's on stage and the commercial and the movie. Um, but there's also, I think, people that probably don't want to work with me because they don't want to have to deal with, you know, making accommodations or accessibility or getting pitched people that are disabled for all roles. So, I mean, I'm, as much as I feel like I'm making a lot of steps forward, I also think there are people that don't want to work with me, and I don't necessarily want to work with them either. But there is still this lack of like interest, from some people to see that there is this lack of interest in including everybody, and that there's some, trends in terms of inclusion. And I think often disability is left behind and people don't include that in inclusion and diversity conversations. And there's no diversity without disability. And every community has disability within the community. It's the one underrepresented community. We all can join at any time. Like, there's so many things about it that I think, test people's, sense of vulnerability. There's so many different elements of that, also is a beautiful thing. And part of what we, want to see when we're watching something is the humanity. But, there definitely are times where I'm up against someone who isn't interested in that, or they don't understand what that person brings to the table, or even people that really want to work with disabled talent but don't understand certain elements. Like, I've had people say, you know, when we're casting a blind or low vision role, like, why is that person's, can you tell that actor's eyes not to shake? And I'm like, okay, but you wrote a project and brought in all of these disabled actors. You brought me in to help you with the project. Like, there's still this lack of education that you have, even though you've done all this research and you have all this interest in the community. So as much as I love that, like, I am getting to do a lot of great stuff, there is still a lot of education to do, even with the people that have a vested interest and are, you know, trying to further representation. I still see places where it isn't a win, but then there are places like you said, like that deodorant commercial. Like, I worked on a Target ad earlier this year. It was around the Super Bowl. So, and we cast an actor to play a spouse in the commercial who happened to have a limb difference. And I didn't ask the team. I didn't say, hey, is it okay that I share this actor who, you know, is a lower limb amputee? I just asked before we were there, like, what's the access, like, I asked for the lay of the land, basically, because I just wanted to know that the actor was going to be safe and that there was going to be, you know, no issue with them being on set. It was a lower budget sort of scenario, I guess, so there wasn't an accessibility coordinator. But often when I'm at the top of a project, what I say is like, what's the, you know, oh, we don't have, like, we don't have an accessibility coordinator, let's talk about it. Like, we're going to need them, so why don't we bring them in now? It's great to have them a part of the project when we're actively casting, so I can be bouncing ideas off of them, talking to them about somebody's disability. And also, like, the thing people don't realize is that you need the accessibility coordinator there to also, there's a breastfeeding mom to make sure that they have a space to breastfeed, that the parent breaks a leg and therefore you know, the guardian of the child actor who maybe is not disabled has somebody who is needing accommodations to be able to have that talent on set. I know we're going to talk a little bit about more of it, but like food allergies, there's so many things. So, you know, when I start on a project, I like to know, just like I would want to know if there was an intimacy coordinator to be there, if there was, you know, moments that we needed that for, you know, based on the creative. That's all stuff that's really important to me, is kind of being at the start of a project and being able to be a part of it. But yeah, I get to work in everything. I work in TV, film. I do a lot of voiceover casting, which is a really great place to see disability representation, because, you know, who is an octopus? You know, who is a shark? Like, why wouldn't that person be disabled, or why couldn't that character be disabled, or what, you know, I also, and I think also, like, I do a lot of work with neurodivergent actors in the VO space. You know, people who see the world in a different way often can portray these characters in a way that other people can't. Like, you know, you bring a different perspective, and that's what makes your performance beautiful. And with voiceover, I often find that disabled actors also just bring this different read of the role, and sometimes that's what we're looking for. It's not that someone even knows, they can't put their finger on it, but when they hear it, that different perspective is what changes things. And that's what I see with all projects that I work on disability wise. But I think with voiceover, sometimes I can kind of like sneak it in there without someone realizing that it is that part of their identity that brings that nuanced performance that you're actually looking for, without knowing what to call it and not being able to put your finger on it.
Every time Danielle speaks, my mic drops, guys. Every time she speaks, she encapsulates everything I think. Oh my goodness. So I have so many things. So just FYI, and I'm sure all disabled people do this because we're all the same, obviously, but that's a joke, guys. But every time I see a disabled person in a commercial, like I saw a disabled person in a Peloton commercial, my husband's like, look, a disabled person. And I'm like, oh, you're right. And I'm like, we should have disabled people in exercise commercials, because guess what? Disabled people exercise. I exercise every day. And through thinking that disabled people are just regular people who can do voiceovers. Now, let us remember that Peter Dinklage is also in the Wicked movie, and he is a goat. He is not playing a disabled character.
Yeah.
He is a goat. And not only do we adore the goat, Professor Delamain, but everybody thinks he dresses so darn dapper on the internet, and I am inclined to agree. Also, I want to say with the flood of comments coming in, yes, guys, we are doing a Q&A, and yes, Danielle, every single time you speak, I learn more and more about you, of how important you are truly to the industry. Justice to the professor, precisely. You are critical, and these conversations are so critical. Something you touched on was the accessibility for disabled and non-disabled people. Guys, when we have accessibility on a set for everyone, everyone benefits. This is what disabled advocates say over and over again until we're blue in the face. Accessibility benefits everyone. Guys, you know I've been talking about the recent death of Dominique Brown, a Disney influencer who died at an influencer event due to the fact that there were no accessibility coordinators on set. Accessibility can literally save lives. Guys, either Danielle or Chantal, how can we change the industry to really see the value of an accessibility coordinator, to really see the value of including disabled writers, disabled producers? How do we bring this message or send it in a different way, or just, just have a different conversation?
I think it's happening. I think we're literally here and it's happening right now. I mean, changes actually happening. The world has seen that there is an entire talent skill base that's not being tapped into. It's not just about in front of the camera, behind the camera, everywhere. There is a huge skill base that isn't being accessed enough. And we are on the cusp of something huge. I keep saying it, but this is massive.
It really is, guys. It really is. So for Chantal, we're so excited about this movie. We've all been up for days and weeks thinking about this movie, dissecting this movie, adoring this movie, thinking about Jonathan Bailey in so many ways. It gives us all by panic to think about Jonathan Bailey. Oh my God. But so what was your favorite part of the film, and what was your best experience, and what would you say was your best interaction with the cast or crew where you really felt you were getting that message of inclusion is for everybody across?
I think it was really significant for me when I was being contacted by people that weren't in the movie but behind the scenes of the movie to say, I understand you're an access coordinator and I have these needs and this would help me perform better in my department, which could have been props or could have been, and that made that to me was really exciting, because I thought, oh my gosh, it's so much bigger than how I entered with this picture. It was really exciting to see on how many levels it was necessary. Gosh, what was every day was exciting. And I haven't really spent a lot of time around celebrities, so I proper geeked out several times. Michelle spoke to me and I was like so I'm like, I'm not the coolest person, but it was all epic and really exciting. And everybody, I think the whole ethos of inclusion was just manifested in every pore of production of that movie. So it felt easy, it felt comfortable. I wasn't battling to kind of be heard. I wasn't, like in my life, I've always had to awaken people and say, look, and they were awake. It was already an accessible environment mentally, and all I had to do was make it physically so.
Chantal, I think my audience would disagree with you. They're sending you so many fire emojis and heart emojis. You are fantastic. Accessibility work matters. Accessibility creates real inclusion. We love you. We care about you. We need you desperately. When I heard that there was an accessibility coordinator on this film, I was just so over the moon, because you don't hear about that, let alone the disabled characters and the disabled access coordinator getting publicity. Chantal was just featured in People and Pop Sugar, and that is fantastic, guys. We need to build these accessible environments, and not only do we need to build these accessible environments, people are excited about it. We are so excited that John Chu built his own set and was like, this is the experience we want to create with this movie. It's an experience to include accessibility, to have authentic disabled representation, to have complex representation, representation that doesn't fall into tropes or, isn't. It's complex because guess what? Disabled people are complex. Danielle is working very hard, and so is Chantal, to make people understand that movies and film and television are a reflection of our life, and disabled people need to be included in that dialogue.
Well, sorry.
Oh, good.
I was going to say, when disabled people are cast in roles that aren't for disabled people, then I can rest in peace. Because when a disabled person isn't defined by their disability in a movie or in a series, then I will Mexican wave.
Yes. You are a ceiling breaker, Chantal. I agree, guys. This is such a fantastic conversation. And as you guys can see, I get very excited talking about accessibility and inclusion in every regard. And I just want you guys to know how special and important this is to the entire community. We are celebrating this movie, and as we know, being a disabled person, there's not a lot to celebrate. So having something like this, we can celebrate. Disabled joy is powerful. Disabled joy is what's going to fix this country as a whole. So I'm just so excited about this film. Danielle, I want to switch over to you. Can you kind of talk about some of your projects that you worked on? And then, of course, since this is a Wicked conversation, you have to let us know what your favorite part of the Wicked movie was.
I mean, it's hard. I have so many projects I've worked on that I'm excited about. I mean, one of them is actually the one that I met Cecily on, was this Project Faces Music Party. That was just a like music variety show for kids. And I really worked closely with the choreographers that were hired, and I've gone on to work with them again to incorporate disabled dancers. And it was really the first time I ever kind of said to them, like, hey, instead of saying, like, can I bring in disabled dancers or can I do this? I said, hey, I have all of these great wheelchair dancers that I'm going to share as selects. What do you think is the best scene to include them in? And instead of it being like, well, I was like, because and I was like, if you need any, education on working with wheelchair dancers, like I can, help you with that. And I'd already had that conversation with, the person that kind of runs the roulettes about that, just so I had that co-conspirator, which can be really important when you're casting, just to make sure you have that person that's going to kind of back you up and support and give you whatever, education that other person might need. But what the choreographer said was like, that's great. Like, wouldn't it be so fun if we had like a version of the song, The Locomotion? What if we had that be, feature our wheelchair dancer, like as the lead, like they have wheels already. And it was like, oh, well, yeah, that's great. And then the next project we did together, it wasn't like, hey, let's have this conversation. It was like, hey, Danielle, we want wheelchair dancers in this moment. So let's go back to this person from, like it was this cohesive conversation, just like if you were going to say you wanted to work with a celebrity again or something like that. So that was really great. around the same time, I had done a rebrand for Nickelodeon, like for all of their imaging and marketing campaign type work. And they incorporated a deaf family in that content, and which was beautiful and wonderful. But they didn't know that they needed to hire a Dazzle, a director of artistic sign language. And instead of it being like, ugh, like we don't have the budget for that, it was like, oh, tell me how that works. And, I was able to find them a Dazzle in is shot in Austin, Texas, and it wasn't which they have a great school for the deaf. And actually, the family that we cast is the ASL Barbie, that mom. But that was before Barbie, so it was really exciting that we got to work together, and I got to work with her kids. But yeah, I have a few things like that have just been like I've had these sort of out of the box ideas and been able to really work and make them happen. Like also the Blues Clues and You movie having Ali Stroker in it, and like she was one of our celebrity cameos, and she was treated just like every other celebrity. Getting to work on Pulse, which is a new series that's coming out on Netflix, that was amazing. With Carlton Cuse, who's the creator of Lost. They have a really prominent character who's based off a real person who's a wheelchair user, who has a spinal cord injury based off a real ER doctor, which was really, really cool. And getting to kind of like dig into all of that research and how you make an ER accessible and that they really do exist, and getting to connect with all of these real doctors in the space who also wanted to submit for the role, in addition to trained actors. And the actor that we cast was someone I'd cast in another project that was not, I had cast her in a non-disability specific character, in a play, and she was incredible. But she also taught me a lot about advocating from my side for actors, but also making sure that their voice is heard first, because sometimes that can be a little bit hard when there isn't an accessibility coordinator. I'm like a very big mama bear and I want to just jump in. And she was very much obviously able to speak for herself. And I was furious that they did not listen to her, something that she asked for that was very important for her health. And I'd been traveling that day, and I like got home and like, or got off the plane, or it was like the 20 minutes when you're landing, you don't have Wi-Fi and you get like all these emails for that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so mad. But I was like, you know what? This just furthers why I need an accessibility coordinator to be there, be boots on the ground all the time. So as much as like they've had all these wins, there's always things that happen. Or like I worry when talent travels that's a wheelchair user. Like I'm stressed the whole time because it's you even now with like this new great thing that just got passed with making sure someone has a loaner chair. It's like that just
Yeah.
shows you but that just shows you how stupid the airline industry is. They don't understand that there isn't really a loaner chair that works. That's like giving somebody shoes that don't fit on them. It's worse, but like they don't understand. So there's just, for every win where I get something that's really big, there's like still so much ableism and non accessibility focused issues to that there's so many issues that are accessibility issues that are people are not focused on, that we end up having other problems. So for every win, I do feel like sometimes there's a little bit of that, like, oh, what, like this is still the world we live in. But there's been so many wins, and so many projects where like people do want to bring me in because they know I'm going to bring in that person for a role, even if it's not as written, or they're really excited to tell me that there is going to be a disabled character written in the series, later down the line. Like, just wait for this character. We're so excited that you're going to get to work on this, but please bring in disabled actors for all roles. But like, just know that this character is coming, like that there is that excitement. Because yeah, people want to see themselves on screen. That's the real world being reflected, and people want to see themselves reflected, and I get it. I mean, I was a kid actor. I grew up doing this, but I had a very silent, yeah, I had a very siloed existence. I grew up around disability. I didn't know it was uncommon to have people with disability in your family, in your classroom. Um, that was just part of my life. But when I went to auditions, I didn't see that. I didn't see anybody that looked any different than me. And I kind of thought that was just going on audition, which made sense. But then when I was on, you're going out for your type. Then when I was on set, there was nobody disabled. I mean, I acted professionally in the early 90s. So, there was nothing going on there. And as I got older and got into casting, that was my thing. I was like, well, okay, I'm bringing in all these people, but why am I not seeing, if you're having a birthday party with 25 people, somebody's going to be disabled. I mean, in my life, like,
Right.
Yeah.
but that isn't what everybody grew up with, and that isn't what everybody expects to see. And the response was not, to me, which was wonderful and says a lot about Nickelodeon where I was. The response wasn't like, no, don't bring those people in, or no, that's not what we want to see. It was, please, that's such a great idea. Can you bring in actors with disabilities? And I would call agents, and they were like, we don't represent, maybe someone's brother or sister that we represent, but we don't actually represent people with disabilities. So it's come so far that, now there are actual opportunities, and therefore agents, because it all comes down to money and what jobs exist. These jobs do exist, but we still have a really long way to go, because there is still this, assumption that unless it's specified that a role is able-bodied, cisgendered, and white, unless it says something different. And that's there's a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot of work to do, but we are seeing characters that are, maybe Nessa Rose wasn't, for example, a person of color when you see Wicked, not to say she never has been, but I'm saying that's not how it was written. And like, let's flip it on its head. Like, why isn't she? And by finding someone like Marissa, then we gave someone like Cece an opportunity. And then all of these other kids are going to have opportunities and are seeing themselves. And like the social media, I mean, obviously for me, that's my favorite part of the movie is, and also the fact that she has 2 lines and she's this
He's smart.
sensation.
Yeah.
She's
Like everybody,
so much fun for saying yes and no. Like,
Yeah.
right?
I find that so refreshing. Like,
She's a gift now. She's actually a gift.
Mhm.
Yeah. She's a legend.
Yeah. From that one little,
Yeah.
but she is the cutest thing in the world.
She is, and her whole family are exceptional. They are phenomenal people, really.
Great.
And guys, I'm loving this conversation so much. My head is just absolutely spinning. This conversation is so important. And I want to take a minute to recognize Marissa Bodie and Cecily for Marissa Bodie has been her own advocate throughout this entire film, along with Chantal and you helping her with things on set, because a lot of times when I talk to disabled actors, they say that's the biggest barrier is accessible sets, accessible spaces. And that was something that Chantal worked very hard on, making sure that wheelchair users weren't going through the grass, making sure wheelchair users had, accessible trailers and, accessible makeup experiences. Like it is an all-inclusive experience when we're thinking about it. And I think one of the things that has been very difficult with Marissa Bodie that she has mentioned in the New York Times is that people are currently making fun of her for being a disabled person and a villain. She's being very villainized, but she is doing a great job of saying, it's okay to not like a character. It's okay to not like a disabled character. But what is not okay is making fun of my disability, because disability is real. And so it's a complex thing, right? When we bring disability into the conversation. And I think, and I definitely understand with Danielle, like, I think you understand disabled people, right? Because we get so excited for these milestones like Wicked, right? But then there's like 10 steps back that happen in terms of representation and what we see on screen. So we need to ensure that we're hiring disabled producers, disabled writers, disabled makeup artists, disabled designers, disabled people on every level. Because when we hire disabled people, that doesn't create problematic narratives. Just wanted to say that.
It's so easy to make an area accessible. It's not complicated. It really is. You just need to know and you need to care. And need to seek advice from people that know what they're talking about. It's not hard to do. It really shouldn't be an obstacle.
I, and maybe Danielle, can you kind of speak to this? Is there still a lot of fear of how to deal with disabled talent?
I think there's people that don't know how, but I don't think it's as much of a fear when I think when people know there's nothing, they know there's nothing to be afraid of, and there's nothing that you can't do with. I mean, just look at a movie like Wicked. I mean, you're doing kind of crazy things with people that are disabled. You're doing it safely because you have a team there. I mean, it's not, but I, have had projects come to me where they were like, oh, we're going to shoot on, the eighth floor and there's no elevator and it's a wheelchair user's story. We're going to carry them up the stairs. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, that's not safe, like, and I can't work on a project that's not safe. And so then I get them inaccessible. There's all these elements of it that there is still this ignorance, even when people do care sometimes. But I think once people see what it is, it's not scary and it's not hard. But and I think it's really important, and what something that Wicked did so right and that we're hearing about in the press, and you touched upon, was having accessible spaces that are not always the spaces we see on set, because that's something I think people don't always know unless they really work in this community, that you're not including someone if they can't eat lunch with everybody. You're not including someone if they can't have their hair and makeup done with everybody. I have friends who have been on some really major sets who are disabled. They were getting their hair and makeup done all together, and they were put in a different spot. And they were like, "Oh, it's great. You have this you have this accessible space." And he's like, "I want to be with everybody else getting their hair and makeup done. Like, I want to eat lunch with everybody. Like that. Oh, but you have this great area for you to eat lunch. Well, I don't want to eat lunch by myself. Like, what are you talking about? And I've had that on projects where I've gotten, they're telling me where this talent's going to go for their dressing room, and I'm giving directions, and I'm like, why is that one person going all the way over there? They're like, oh, well, everyone else is getting changed in this loft. And I'm like, no, like, I'm not having that kid go to this other area. They're like, oh, it's so much nicer. I'm like, I don't care if it's nicer. Like, send them to the ghetto room that everyone else is going to. That's where they want to be. Like, kids want to be with each other, and it's not an inclusive experience if the wheelchair user. I've also had on projects where, they're trying to show me a shot and the wheelchair user is off to the side. They're like, oh, well, they're featured more. I can see their whole chair. It's like, yeah, but the wheelchair user should not be off to the side. They should be playing with everybody on the playground. If we're shooting something that's about playing together, being off to the side just so you can see the chair, that's exploitation. That's not inclusion. So, there's still a lot of, and I don't think it's necessarily done in malice, but there's a lot of times people don't realize the connotation of the choice that they're making when they are including talent. But that's why you have to have someone in the room. I mean, I'm an ally. I'm an advocate. I'm not a member of this community. I I work with somebody who is my associate who is disabled. I bring someone, and she's not my assistant. I don't bring in like a junior person. I bring in a decision maker to work with me. And that's part of the project. But that's what we need. You don't need a disabled consultant, and this is this whole thing Inevitable Foundation's doing, which is incredible, and they're doing incredible work. But it's not about having a consultant or having like a little person to give yourself that pat on the back. It's having a decision maker, having a department head be disabled. I mean, having, just like you would have a department head be from another marginalized community, you shouldn't be bringing in just a consultant. It's bringing someone into the space, and if, making them a producer, making them a stakeholder in the project. And that's how like these really great things happen when you're watching content. That's when you see somebody having, if they didn't have Chantal, maybe they wouldn't have had that makeup scenario. They wouldn't have had that, opportunity to maybe even go to an accessible wrap party. Like, you're not, you're thinking even beyond the set. It's like you should be able to go and participate in everything that your cast and your peers are doing. And sometimes you need to speak up because that's not happening. But it sounds like, I think what we're seeing with Wicked is that the press is showing like this was a movie like from soup to nuts that was done with accessibility in mind. And it's a huge success, and there is a huge following partly because of that. I mean, it was already going to be a blockbuster, but like the level of ceilings that it's breaking, is related to these really strong choices that the director made and the people that he brought in.
Danielle, I wish I had somebody like you when I was younger, when I went to school concerts and I had to like sit on the sidelines because the stage wasn't accessible. I wish I knew a fierce mama bear advocate like you. My mom is an amazing advocate and I love her dearly, but like you're saying like, oh, I'm not part of this community. But you are, even if you are not disabled, you're fighting so fiercely for us to be in rooms that we are traditionally kept out of, gatekept out of, locked out of, discriminated out of. And I'm just forever grateful for that. And I don't want to start crying, but I totally will. But like, I went to see Wicked when I was 14 years old in Chicago when it first opened. I know I'm old. And it changed my life. And I didn't have an inaccessible experience in the theater that unfortunately Chantal had when she went to the theater to see the Wicked musical. And I think that's a really important dialogue that we need to be having, because I know a lot of disabled people are coming forward and saying, I went to the theater to see Wicked as a disabled person, and I had an inaccessible experience. I think when we highlight these scenarios, it's not a time, for call out or cancel culture. It's a time to say, okay, let's rewrite that narrative. Let's help that person. I saw an article where a disabled person couldn't see Wicked, and they made sure that that person had captions, that they had hearing devices to hear. I'm like, when we call these things out as fiercely as Danielle did, that I can never recreate, we're making a difference. So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because I want to be very positive about Wicked, right? But I also want people to understand this is just the tip of the iceberg. It needs to go so much deeper. Again, hiring disabled actors, hiring disabled producers, hiring disabled writers, having access coordinators, having intimacy coordinators, having inclusive casting directors like Danielle, who are keeping disability and the disabled community in mind. It's important. And I'm just so incredibly grateful for you guys. If you have some time, I'd love for you to take some questions from the audience. I know we have a lot of disabled actors, thanks to you guys on the live right now, who are listening with bated breath to everything you guys are saying, because this is monumental for us. And so guys, if you have any questions for Danielle or Chantal, let us know and write them down below, and we'll try to get through as many as we possibly can. But I just want to say, what you're doing is really, really important. And I think, so if you're familiar with the history of The Wizard of Oz and some of the problematic treatment of the disabled people on set, obviously 1939, it was a different time, but the separation of disabled people not being able to eat lunch with the main cast or be a part of the main cast, when we create those kinds of barriers, we're saying you're not equal. And separation is not inclusion. So what Chantal is working so hard to do and what Danielle is working so hard to do is removing that barrier and saying, we're going to make it an inclusive experience, whether you're disabled or non-disabled. So guys, give us your questions, please.
It seems like a really obvious statement, but equality, it seems so obvious to me, but equality is about everyone being equal, having equal access to everything. And it doesn't seem to be as obvious to everybody as it seems to me, but it seems like a crazy thing to say out loud, but inclusion and
I think
equality.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go on, please.
I think disabled people think that daily. We're like, people are not thinking about inclusion version like we are all the like it's so obvious to us, guys, and I'm a very honest person. I just got stuck in my apartment door earlier before this interview. I live in an inaccessible apartment. I think people, that kind of blows people's minds as a very visibly disabled person. They're like, you live in an inaccessible apartment? I'm like, do you know how hard it is to find accessible apartments? It's, it's challenging. So yeah, we have to fix things on every level. So we have a question, Chantal, to you. How did you get into being an accessibility coordinator? Did you take courses? Um,
So
you know,
there wasn't a training opportunity that I was aware of, and when the suggestion of interviewing for the job came up, I just went and took the interview. And I think, like I said in the beginning, my whole life experience has been about adapting my environment as being the only disabled person in every setting, as a dancer, as a foster carer, as an advocate for young disabled or deaf people. I I got my training from my life. My life was my training. Now there are training courses available there. I know that there's courses running in the US. I know that there's a course running here in the UK. There are opportunities to train, but I think in my interview, the conversation that we had, I got the job because I understood what the point was, and I also, they won me over as well as I winning them over.
one of the things, guys, and please drop if you have any more questions. One of the things that you talk about often is this amazing budget, and that disabled people have brought up. They had a huge budget to do accessibility, to kind of have that magic, right, of creating these really inclusive scenarios, having Marissa Bodie floating above everybody else on a pulley.
Yeah.
Really magical, and it's really, to me, it shows what is possible
Yeah.
when we include accessibility in the conversation. And I just have to ask, we love seeing disabled people on the red carpet. My friend Jim Lebrecht was on the red carpet with Judy Heumann, the late Judy Heumann, for the movie Crip Camp, the Crip Camp documentary on Netflix. We love seeing disabled people on the red carpet. So how was that for you?
Wow. That was mind-blowing. It was an incredible experience to be on the green carpet.
Green carpet, there we go, guys.
But to see the representation, that clip in LA of Marissa and Cecily together, oh my gosh, when they moved together that, it's been a really emotional experience for me, because, working on it was quite a while ago. And now with the release of the movie and all of this happening, and the response that I've received, and the community that I've experienced that I never had before, has been quite an emotional experience for me. I really value immensely. It's like healed my inner unmet needs. My inner child that didn't have that is really appreciative of everybody who's reached out to me.
We absolutely adore you. And I
You
cannot
looked
even.
amazing on the carpet too.
Oh,
I loved seeing you there. I thought, for me, like, I thought it was so cool to see the accessibility coordinator getting, like, seen and getting love. And like, it's casting directors, we don't get that much either, and I don't really like being on a red carpet or green carpet or any of those sorts of things. That's why I'm on this side. But there are moments where, like, we need to collect our flowers, and you were a star of the movie, even if we didn't see you. Like, your work, was spoken about so much that it was so nice to see that your image was getting press and your story was getting press on that carpet.
I think Marissa has really made that very, very given a huge platform to that. Yeah, she really has been incredible, and she was the one who invited me as her guest to the premiere, so that was very special.
Last act.
last act, guys. We are getting to the top of the hour here. Thank you guys so much. This conversation has been absolutely life-changing. I can't believe that I am sitting here with somebody who has directly worked on the Wicked film as I'm goofily in my kitchen crying my eyes out and singing to Defying Gravity. This is a dream come true. And I'm so happy for these moments and that the disabled community can celebrate these moments and feel excited and feel happy. And we're just having the best time celebrating this movie in every aspect. And I just really appreciate you guys being with here today. This has been an amazing conversation, life-changing. Guys, real quick, I'm an independent producer with my own podcast. This interview will be on my Spotify podcast. Please check it out. Remember, it's the holidays, and it'd be a great thing to support an independent disabled entrepreneur during the holidays. I have merchandise, my green merchandise that says accessibility creates real inclusion. I know, guys, I'm always on that hustle and grind. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Chantal. I'm just so happy we could make this happen. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I was asked if this is going to be on Reels as well, Instagram Reels. Do you put it there?
Yes, I will be
Okay,
dropping the
there.
interview. I do like to clean it up
Oh yeah.
for Kat.
I was just relaying the question that was asked to me directly. So I was.
Yes.
I think cleaning up makes sense. Okay, cool.
Sounds great. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
This was
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you guys.